Venice invented double-entry bookkeeping. It created marine insurance contracts. It built the first government bond market. It operated the world's first industrial manufacturing facility. It developed the holding company structure that modern corporations still use. And then, in 1498, a Portuguese sailor rounded a cape in southern Africa and made every geographic advantage Venice had spent 3 centuries building irrelevant. The most institutionally innovative city in medieval European history was killed not by a superior institution, but by a superior map. This episode is about what Venice built, how it died, and what it teaches. Venice's founding myth, refugees from the Roman mainland fleeing barbarian invasions in the 5th century CE, building on islands in the lagoon because the islands were defensible, is partially accurate and profoundly consequential. The lagoon's specific geographic properties, too shallow for large warships to navigate without local knowledge, connected to the Adriatic by navigable channels known only to Venetians, positioned at the intersection of northern European land trade routes and Mediterranean sea trade. The geographic position was not naturally dominant. It was made dominant through centuries of specific institutional and commercial decisions that turned a lagoon refuge into the most powerful trading city in the Western world. Geography was the foundation. Institution was the structure. Double-entry bookkeeping, the specific accounting method that records every transaction as both a debit and a credit, enabling businesses to track their financial position with accuracy impossible under single-entry methods, was systematized by a Venetian friar named Luca Pacioli in 1494. Pacioli described the method used by Venetian merchants in his mathematical textbook Summa di Arithmetica. The specific commercial consequence, double-entry bookkeeping, made it possible to identify profit and loss across complex multi-party trading operations. It made Venice's merchants among the most financially literate in the world. It is still the foundational accounting method used by every business on Earth. Every balance sheet in history is, in a specific sense, a Venetian invention. The Venetian marine insurance contract, the specific financial instrument that allowed merchants to transfer the risk of cargo loss at sea to a third party in exchange for a premium, was among the earliest systematized forms of what we now call insurance. The first recorded marine insurance contract dates to approximately 1347 in Genoa, but Venice systematized and codified the practice into a functioning market. The specific commercial consequence, merchants could take on more risk, financing larger cargo volumes and more distant voyages, because the catastrophic loss scenario was transferred to an insurer. The marine insurance market made the age of exploration financially possible. Without the ability to insure cargo against loss, the risk of financing an ocean voyage was too large for most investors. Venice and Genoa's insurance markets provided the financial infrastructure for European expansion. China's post-UTO economic transformation is the most extraordinary development story in human history, and it must be told in the same episode that examines the American cost, because both are the same decision's consequences. Between 2001 and 2010, China lifted approximately 400 million people out of poverty, the largest poverty reduction in human history in the shortest time. China's economy grew from approximately $1.5 trillion in 2001 to approximately $6 trillion by 2010, surpassing Japan to become the world's second-largest economy. Per capita income in China grew by approximately 9% per year for a decade, more than doubling the average Chinese income in 10 years. The WTO accession was simultaneously the most politically destabilizing trade decision in American history and the most economically beneficial event for the most people in human history. The specific human geography of China's WTO-enabled transformation is most visible in the Pearl River Delta's extraordinary urban development. Dongguan, a city that barely appeared on maps in 990, had a population of approximately 8 million people by 2010, driven entirely by export manufacturing. Foshan, Zhongshan, Zhuhai, the entire Pearl River Delta became a continuous urban industrial agglomeration of approximately 60 million people within approximately 20 years of China's economic opening. The speed of urbanization was unprecedented in human history, faster than the Industrial Revolution's English urbanization, faster than any previous development model. The factories built the cities. The WTO accession built the factories. The specific speed of the transformation creates its own specific vulnerabilities. Aging infrastructure, aging workforce, the specific challenges of a manufacturing economy facing its own rising wage costs. The political consequences of the WTO accession's manufacturing disruption are the episode's most directly relevant dimension in 2026. The specific sequence, the China shock's job losses concentrated in the Midwest and Southeast produced communities with persistent economic decline, declining wages, increasing mortality rates from opioid addiction, and the specific sense of political abandonment documented in extensive sociological research. These communities became the geographic base of the political realignment that produced the 2016 election result. Donald Trump's campaign explicitly targeted these communities with trade protectionism rhetoric, promising to renegotiate trade deals, impose tariffs on Chinese goods, and bring manufacturing back. The message connected specifically because the economic reality it described was the actual lived experience of the communities receiving it. The Trump administration's tariff program beginning in 2018 and the Biden administration's extension and expansion of those tariffs represents the political consequence of the China shock becoming trade policy. The Section 301 tariffs on Chinese goods reached approximately 25% on approximately $250 billion of Chinese imports by 2019. The Biden administration maintained them and added specific tariffs on electric vehicles, 100%, semiconductors, batteries, and solar cells. The tariff-specific economic effect, they increased prices for American consumers and businesses purchasing Chinese goods, reduced some Chinese imports, but did not reverse the manufacturing job losses because manufacturing had been displaced to other low-wage countries, not returned to the United States at scale. The political logic of the tariffs and their economic effect are different things. Both are real. Venice is sinking, slowly, measurably, and with increasing consequence. The city descends at approximately 2 millimeters per year due to sediment compaction and water extraction, while the Adriatic rises at approximately 2 to 3 millimeters per year due to climate change. The combined effect, the relative sea level around Venice, rises by approximately 4 to 5 millimeters annually. The November 2019 Acqua Alta, the highest flood in 53 years, submerged approximately 85% of the historic center, under 1.87 meters of water. St. Mark's Basilica flooded for only the sixth time in 1,200 years. 4 of those 6 floodings have occurred since 2001. The frequency is accelerating with the mathematical precision of a documented trend. The MOS, Modulo Sperimentale Elettromeccanico, is the flood barrier system installed at the 3 inlets connecting the Venetian lagoon to the Adriatic, consisting of 78 hinged flap gates that lie flat on the lagoon floor when not in use and rise to block tidal surges when activated. Missouri Sea was conceived in the 1980s, approved in 2001, and completed in 2021 after 30 years of construction. Approximately 8 billion euros of expenditure and significant corruption scandals that produced criminal convictions. MOS provides protection against floods up to 3 meters above normal sea level. It represents the specific engineering response to Venice's contemporary physical crisis. It also represents a specific institutional challenge. MOS requires continuous maintenance, raises and lowers with increasing frequency as sea levels rise, and will require upgrading as the sea level threat increases beyond its current design parameters. Venice's most urgent contemporary crisis is not flooding, it is depopulation. The historic city's resident population was approximately 175,000 after World War II. By 2024, it had fallen to approximately 50,000, a decline of approximately 70% in 80 years. The specific mechanism, tourism. Approximately 30 million tourists visit Venice annually, approximately 600 visitors per resident per year. The tourism economy has made ordinary residential life increasingly unviable. Rents have risen beyond local wages. Essential services have been displaced by tourist services. And the specific social infrastructure of a living community, schools, hospitals, local shops has contracted as the resident population has declined. Venice is becoming a museum rather than a city. Venice's governing authorities have implemented specific measures to manage overtourism in 2024 and 2025, including a day tripper entry fee of €5 for visitors arriving without overnight accommodation during peak periods, crowd management systems, and cruise ship restrictions. These measures represent the specific institutional response to an overtourism crisis that threatens the city's survival as a living community. UNESCO has repeatedly warned that Venice risks being placed on the World Heritage in Danger List if resident population decline and tourism-related degradation continue. The specific institutional challenge Venice faces in 2026 is the same structural challenge it faced in 1498. The mechanism of its value, its uniqueness, its beauty, its history, is simultaneously the mechanism of its vulnerability. Venice is being loved to death by the world it helped build. Venice's specific lesson for the cities that built the World Series is the foundational argument. Cities are built by the intersection of geographic advantage and institutional innovation, and they are vulnerable to whatever removes either element. Venice had both: the lagoon's defensive geography and the arsenal's industrial genius, the Rialto's financial innovation, and the Senate's political stability. The Portuguese route removed the geographic advantage. The tourism economy is now removing the institutional foundation. The living community whose specific social infrastructure produced the innovation in the first place. The two threats are 5 centuries apart. The structural pattern is identical. The mechanism that made Venice valuable is simultaneously the mechanism of its specific contemporary vulnerability. Venice's specific contemporary resilience, the quality that makes it the series' most instructive opening, is that it has survived 1498. The city did not end when da Gama rounded the Cape. Venice remained a significant Mediterranean power for another century. Its art, Titian, Tintoretto, Veronese, was produced after the commercial monopoly ended. Its architectural legacy was substantially completed after the decline began. Venice's specific lesson for every subsequent city in this series: the end of economic dominance is not the end of civilizational significance. The institutions Venice built, double-entry bookkeeping, marine insurance, industrial manufacturing, outlasted Venice's dominance by centuries and are still operational. The city may be sinking, the ideas it produced are not. Venice's contribution to the cities that built the World Series is the series' foundational argument. Cities are not primarily economic entities. They are institutional ecosystems, environments where specific geographic conditions, specific human needs, and specific institutional responses intersect to produce innovations whose consequences outlast the specific conditions that produce them. Double-entry bookkeeping outlasted the Venetian commercial monopoly by 5 centuries. Marine insurance outlasted the Venetian arsenal by 5 centuries. The holding company structure outlasted Venetian independence, which ended in 1797 when Napoleon dissolved the Republic, by 2 centuries and is still the dominant form of corporate organization. Venice built institutions. Its institutions built the world. The city may be sinking. The world it built is not. 118 islands, 1 lagoon, the world's first industrial factory, the world's first government bond market, the financial infrastructure of the age of exploration, the worst news in 19,000 years delivered by a Portuguese sailor rounding an African cape, 30 million tourists, 50,000 residents, 85% of the historic center underwater in 2019, Moses' 78 gates providing temporary protection, the laundry still hanging in the back alleys of Cannaregio. Venice is simultaneously the most beautiful, the most fragile, and the most institutionally consequential city in European history. The series continues next episode with Baghdad, the city that preserved civilization while Europe was in the Dark Ages, that produced the mathematical and scientific foundations of the modern world, and that was destroyed by 1 week of Mongol violence in 1258 in the most consequential act of urban destruction in history. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because the story doesn't end here, it evolves. Venice is sinking, its ideas are not. The series has begun.